Welcome everyone to Post Crisis Chat. I'm your co-host Randy, and with me is the ever faithful.
You can call me Cookie. And if you are a first time viewer, welcome. We're glad to have you. Please remember to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so that you will be notified next week when we upload our next episode.
It really is such a small thing to do, and it really helps us grow the channel. If you're not a first-time viewer, welcome back. We are so thankful to have you here.
Yes, and please remember to check out our socials. Now, remember, you can find us on Blue Sky, you can find us on Patreon, and Patreon subscribers get access to Post Crisis Chat Book Club.
The book club is really, really cool. We tell you a week ahead of time which issues we'll be recording a show for and give you a chance to comment on those issues. We'll even read some of your comments on the channel.
Yes, and please be advised, we will be talking about decades old. That's right, I said decades old spoilers in the issue we are discussing today. Now, if you're wondering what issue we're discussing today, let me pop it up for you. We are discussing the Swamp Thing Annual #2 from 1985. Check out that sweet looking cover, baby.
Very nice.
Making a dance for it.
Yeah, you're gonna tell me if I get this wrong. So this is written by Alan Moore with pencils by Stephen Bissette and inks by John Totleben. Did I get it right that time?
That is correct.
Okay,
That is
see our
correct.
last
After
episode
the
for when I
absence.
screwed it up. We open with a brief and poetic tale about how we got here, evil uncles and such. If you'd like more information on that, check out our past episodes. Especially the episode we did last week is especially relevant to what's going on today. This page is once again poorly drawn. I mean, it's going to be complaint I think through the entire series because unfortunately Stephen Bissette, while he can draw wonderful panels and wonderful pages, I feel like he was very rushed in doing this. I will try not to harp on the art too much as we go forward. Swamp Thing is struggling with how to get Abby's soul back because her soul was sent to hell, and he thinks that since he has a physical body, that he is not allowed to travel to hell. But then Swamp Thing remembers he has previously stepped out of the confines of his body. He remembers how to do this and sinks himself down into the green. He starts losing himself in the green since it is his happy place. But then he remembers, wait, gotta focus, gotta find Abby's soul.
That is correct. I do want to bring up one of the things I believe because you just jumped a couple of pages and to where he was traveling into the green. The splash page where we get the credits and everything, I thought he actually did a pretty decent job drawing him. My only complaint, and this could just be my warped and twisted mind, it looks like all of the veins and vines that are growing on Swamp Thing, the brown vines, are growing out of his crotch. And
Yeah, it kind of does,
I,
now that
I
you mention it.
yeah, it's like that's a little bit like I'm torn between being envious and creeped out at the same time.
All right. Once Swamp Thing decides he is going to, he's on a mission, got to get Abby's soul back. He starts to move beyond the green, and he questions whether or not he could be in the afterlife because since he, for the first time he's moving beyond the green. He's never done that before and doesn't really understand where he is.
That I mean, there's so much to unpack in this issue as we get further and further into it. I mean, the traveling into the green was pretty cool. I like that. It's not as cool as the first time we saw it. I thought the first time we saw it was a little bit cooler because he was able, the way he described it and everything. So I understand that like he had to kind of do a quick thing to get into where we're going to essentially, heaven and such. But once we get to heaven, that's, I mean, there's like the fact that there's no background normally bothers me in a comic book, but the way that they did this, I really appreciated the fact that it was just a kind of like anamorphic background, like there's nothing
Very
back there.
nebulous.
Very nebulous. Thank you. Very nebulous. That's a beautiful word for it. And I mean, the girl coming out of the fog, everything about it just it really like you're starting to see where this man is a creative genius of like describing all this stuff and kind of getting you into like I don't know what heaven's supposed to be like, but he's making you really think it's kind of cool.
That's a really good segue into the next part where Swamp Thing comes across a woman who says she is lost in the fog. She is having trouble remembering how she got here. She said she was driving a car and she turned around to tell her son to shut up as he was making noise in the back seat. How dare children make noise in the back seat? And then at that point, she realizes that, oh no, my son isn't here. Mom of the year right here, folks. I mean, really, come on.
I okay, I can't complain too much because I know quite a few parents, and it's like, you can love your children, but you can still be annoyed, like, with your children. You can still, like, get to the point where you're just like, "All right, Jimmy, shut up. I'm tired of listening to you." So, I'm not gonna complain about that.
Yeah, we're not here for parenting advice to offer or receive. So, anyway, she thinks this is some kind of a nightmare, and it's actually about that time her son shows up and tells her, "Mom, it's okay." And honestly, based on the 3 seconds we've known this woman, I think based on what she said, she really doesn't deserve that much comfort. But that's me. Whatever. I'll move on. Her son says he couldn't follow right away, but he is here now. And as I was reading this, I wrote down the note, the implication, of course, being that they were in a car wreck and she wasn't paying attention to the road. She died first, and then her son died shortly after.
That is correct. I thought the cool part to me that really stood out was I like the fact that he kinda took from there's a couple of different religions. I mean, like, me being part of the Mormons at the moment, with the boy saying, like, he's been here before kinda thing. I kinda like that whole primordial life kinda thing, like, okay, we all come from somewhere, then we come here, and then we can kinda go back. That is actually kind of like a really cool concept, and I love that he touched on that.
Is Alan Moore a Mormon?
Oh god, no.
I know the answer. I was
Actually,
just it occurred to
let me
me.
let let me rephrase that. "Oh, sweet Mormon Jesus, no."
No, yeah, actually, I have a bit of background with Mormons as well, and that also made me think of that kind of situation.
What's cool, though, is the fact that it's like, you think maybe, like, that's where he's going, but it kinda feels like as we go on, he touches on several other different religious concepts. So it's almost like he's kinda blending a lot of concepts from various religions together into one, which I found really fascinating, and that's something only, like, the mind of an Alan Moore could probably have pulled off.
Yeah, and we can talk about that as we go on. So at this point, mom and son wander off into the light. Swamp Thing left behind is still kind of unsure of where exactly he is. And then Swamp Thing runs into Deadman, Boston Brand, who is another DC superhero who is in fact dead, just like his name suggests.
Deadman's such a I mean, I love the character, and I've always loved the design of the character, but he's always been a hard character to get into because it's like there's not a lot you can do with him other than him taking over a body and then, doing whatever it is he does. So I feel like you get moments like this where a writer can come in, give you just a brief glimpse of how cool the character can be, and then just leave it up to whoever is going to follow afterwards. And I think not too long after this, they did do a very highly regarded Dead Man miniseries drawn by the great Kelly Jones. I believe that was not too long after he did some stuff in Swamp Thing.
I disagree about what can be done with Deadman, and the reason I say that is I have a giant Deadman omnibus here where they spent many, many issues with Deadman searching for his killer. Incidentally, the last 4 or 5 issues of this omnibus are that mini series that you mentioned that was done in the 80s. So most of this book is pre-crisis. There's a small chunk that is post-crisis, but yeah, they found a lot to do with him.
Yeah, but how often did he have a long running series?
Say that again.
How often did he have a long running series?
He had quite a few issues, although part of the problem was that most of those issues were him searching for his killer. He'd find his killer, and then, oh no, there's evidence that it's not my killer. But you know what? Kirby drew a lot of it, so yeah, the art is there at least. So anyway, back to Deadman. He is a spirit that normal mortals are unable to see. He likes to inhabit the bodies of the mortals, usually without their consent. And Deadman asks when Swamp Thing died. Swamp Thing informs Deadman that he is not dead. Swamp Thing came here of his own free will, and Deadman then informs Swamp Thing they are in a realm of the just dead. Swamp Thing informs Deadman that he is looking for his friend's soul because her soul was cast out of her body unjustly. And to me, the just dead and unjustly, it made me question the word just in this context. I understand that, because of the context of the mom and the kid, it's people who have just now died. I get that, but unjustly, the soul being separated from the body unjustly. I don't know. I thought it was poor writing in this situation.
Um, I don't know because the only thing is like it was kind of it's unjustly from Swamp Thing's perspective. Like you don't really, and it makes sense like from a good guy's perspective because I believe the other people that kind of pop up in this and stuff all say the same thing. From a good guy's perspective, it would be unjustly because she didn't really deserve to die, especially not in that way. So
She definitely
it
didn't
kind
deserve
of
to go to hell.
yeah, it definitely didn't deserve to go to hell. So it's like it kind of makes sense. And like she didn't really die; her soul got ripped from her body. So it's not the same thing as the woman who died in the car accident. She was meant to die. Like
Sure.
that was her time.
I don't know. I wish there was that it had been phrased differently because it kind of caused me to pause and pulled me out of the story I was reading to think about that part. But maybe that's not so bad. Anyway, Deadman offers to give Swamp Thing a tour of the area that they are in as best he can because Deadman mentions that he had only recently discovered this area, and he mentions that people typically show up in this area but then move on rather quickly. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Most of the time people move on quickly, but that indicates that some people don't.
Yeah, which could be interesting. Like that actually could be an interesting dead man story of have him, like meeting people that haven't moved on and, like why haven't they moved on? Maybe he's got to go help them or something like that. So
That
that
would be
like I don't know
interesting.
if he was yeah, I don't know if he was setting up for that. I mean, with Alan Moore, you never know what he's gonna do. But I
Maybe.
thought I was gonna say like yeah, I thought like it kind of left a lot open that would be kind of intrigued to explore.
Yeah, and then Deadman and Swamp Thing decide to go towards the lights. Deadman tells Swamp Thing he isn't supposed to move past the light into whatever is on the other side, but Swamp Thing is welcome to go alone forward. Swamp Thing then questions whether or not he will be going into the presence of God. Deadman tells Swamp Thing not to worry, that Deadman has always been treated fairly by her. And the her being Ramakrishna, which, thanks to having read the Deadman omnibus, is the one who decides to send Deadman back to find his killer and bring his killer to justice. At that point, Swamp Thing seems shocked that God is a woman. If you want to know more about that whole Ramakrishna story, definitely check out that Deadman omnibus. I'll put a link to buy it down below. But yeah, it's got some good stories in
To me, you completely glazed over one of my favorite parts of this issue when they were talking about the poltergeists that were grazing. I thought that's beautiful. That creativity that Alan Moore has of it's like taking something, a poltergeist. I mean, like, most people who are horror fans and stuff know a poltergeist and then turns it into this big ectoplasmic glob that's like a cow that's just grazing out in the afterlife. I'm like, that's such a cool concept.
Since you brought it up, I will say the line that really stood out to me was, if you fly through them being the poltergeist, if you fly through them, they burst and smell terrible. And then Deadman laughs about that.
There's like
It's
so
like
much
cow
cool
tipping
stuff.
for Deadman.
Yeah. I think that's what I like about Dead Man is that he seems like such kind of like a lighthearted character for a guy that's he's dead.
Yeah. And then the Phantom Stranger shows up out of nowhere. You're a fan of the Phantom Stranger?
I am a huge fan of the Phantom Stranger. I have a box devoted entirely to Phantom Stranger comics and appearances, no matter how brief they are. I have
Awesome.
the two black and white showcases back there. I'm on the hunt for the action figure that's out there somewhere. I love the Phantom Stranger.
Interesting to know. I hope you'll be able to tell me more about him because my knowledge of the Phantom Stranger is limited. So Swamp Thing actually mentions that he's met the Phantom Stranger before, which must have happened in issues prior to Moore's run because I haven't read any of those issues. And at that point, Deadman takes his exit. The stranger knows who Swamp Thing is looking for and mentions he saw Arcane come through the area, and Arcane was very mad as he was on his way back to Hell. Stranger also mentions that they must hurry if they are to find Abby, at which point they walk into the light.
The greatest thing, to me, the cool thing about the Phantom Stranger is that he's when he's used in moments like this, these are some of his best appearances because, like, I used to tell you what I know about him. Well, there's not a lot to know about him. Like, no one knows what the hell to do with the Phantom Stranger. Is he a powerful magician character? Is he like the Wandering Jew? There's an issue out there of Secret Origins that's got 3 stories, and Alan Moore writes one of them, and it's 3 proposed origins for the Phantom Stranger.
Interesting.
None of them are actually officially canon. Nobody knows what the Phantom Stranger's origin is, and that's what makes him so interesting to me.
That's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to learning more about the stranger as we go forward in reading through these post crisis DC books. So Swamp Thing does, once they pass through the light, Swamp Thing asks the stranger if they are in heaven. And the stranger says it is an aspect of heaven and that there are many aspects of heaven.
That I loved that idea too because that's again going back to the fact that it's like the many aspects of heaven depending on like which religion or creed or whatever you belong to and believe in. That's actually something I've always kind of like seriously thought about when it comes to like all this stuff like theology and everything is like my whole thing is like I don't believe any religion is actually wrong. I think they're all probably right in a way. So he kind of tied that up really beautifully and touched on something I've always thought for years, and that was really cool. He's a very very smart writer.
I agree. Then something happens that I kind of love this next part and I also kind of hate it. And we'll talk about it. So they meet up with Alec Holland and the stranger is confused. The stranger's like, "Hey, I thought Swamp Thing was Alec Holland." And Swamp Thing says he thought Swamp Thing was Alec too, but to me that's at odds with the 2, maybe 3 times before that we have had Alec Holland and Swamp Thing trying to separate themselves from each other. So I think it's really cool that Swamp Thing gets to meet Alec Holland, but I also think the line in there about Swamp Thing thinking he was Holland is not a very good writing, given that we've previously been over this at least 2 times, maybe 3. I don't know. What do you think?
I think you misread that. I think it was the in the context. Maybe it didn't come off right, but I took it as he was telling Stranger that yeah, at a point he did think he was Al Cullen, but he's not. Um, that's kind of how I felt like it was interpreted, because especially when you go to the panel where he's like talking about the burial and the stuff like that, they both kind of have this smirk on their face, like like hey, thanks for that, hey man, no problem, I got your back, brother, kind of thing. Like, so that's kind of how I took it. Was just him an offhanded remark, being like, yeah, I thought the same thing, but you're the Phantom Stranger. What bothers
Yeah.
me is the fact that I feel like the Phantom Stranger should have known because he is pretty close in ties with a lot of this stuff, especially heaven, hell, a lot of mysticism. Stranger probably would have figured that out.
Hmm. Interesting. Eh, possibly poor writing for more than one reason or for different reasons depending on who's reading it because it's up to the person reading to interpret. And that actually segues really well into Holland thanks Swamp Thing for burying him as it gave Holland peace and allowed Holland to enter into heaven. I'm really hoping that this is the end of the is Swamp Thing Alec or not discussion because I feel like that really finalizes it. And then Holland tells Swamp Thing that Abby has not been there. And then something really interesting happened. Holland's wife Linda calls out to him, and Holland invites Swamp Thing to meet Linda, but Swamp Thing declines.
That I mean, it kinda tracks because why would you meet her, but you kinda don't wanna get caught up on any, like, lingering emotions? 'Cause he for a long time, he mourned her death as his wife, and now he's coming to terms with the fact that he's not Alec, and he was never married, and obviously there's some romantic feelings, I feel like, between Abby and Swamp Thing, at least on
Yeah,
Swamp
totally,
Thing's side.
absolutely. You know, I see what you mean, and that definitely puts that scene in a different perspective for me that I didn't see the first time around. Just incidentally why I love doing the show and discussing this with a friend because he sees things I don't, I see things he doesn't, and it helps us appreciate the comics more. You know what? If you saw something that we didn't see, put it down in the comments because those conversations about comics like this are how we all learn to appreciate comics more. Anyway, I digress.
Exactly. Expand our education.
Swamp Thing and the Stranger then decide to move on. Swamp Thing mentions it's getting cold, and the Stranger says that they are getting further away from God's presence. The Stranger also refers to God as He, which seems to confuse Swamp Thing given that Dead Man said God was a she. The Stranger tells Swamp Thing that Dead Man only has a few small pieces to a much bigger puzzle, which I found that line really, really interesting and also a little bit of a cop out because by doing that, it's interesting to think about all the possibilities out there, but at the same time, it also leaves things open to the point where can anything about the afterlife, about heaven and hell, etc., can that ever actually be canon if anybody can just come along and change whatever they want?
That's kind of a good point. I do know a little bit about God in this universe because doing, like, research on some other stuff, DC technically does have a god. I'll have to double check, in a future episode, look up what his name is and everything, but he has made several appearances in comic books. So I don't know if that's something they knew back when they were doing this, or if that's something that's kind of come up later on, so they can kind of like tie up those loose ends or what. But there is somebody.
And also, technically, we are in pre-crisis Swamp Thing right now, which despite the name of our show being post-crisis chat, pre-crisis Swamp Thing is where we started, so we get the whole Swamp Thing story as it starts pre-crisis and moves post-crisis. That all could have been retconned in the crisis. So what we're talking about in this issue may just not even apply anymore.
That's definitely a possibility because a crisis does mess with the timeline a lot. So that could have been something they did streamline.
The stranger mentions that they need permission before they proceed into Pandemonium. Swamp Thing seems surprised that they need permission, and then out of nowhere, the Spectre's giant face appears.
That I freaking love. That's another character I really have started to get into a lot more recently is the Spectre, and the fact they're going through his eye. I mean, that's really kinda cool, but it also made me think it's like there's been a lot of references to the eye. So, I kinda wonder, is there a deeper meaning behind all of this stuff?
Yeah, you're right. There's eyes all over the place. In fact, when we did that last episode, I mentioned how much I like the Swamp Thing's glowing orange eyes on that black background. So you're right. Alan Moore does do a lot of stuff with the eyes, and I'm going to start paying more attention to that. It's interesting that the Spectre and recognizes the stranger, and of course the stranger knows who the Spectre is. And then the Spectre notices Swamp Thing. The Spectre calls Swamp Thing an Earth Elemental, and mentions that he thought all of the Earth Elementals were destroyed. That's like some
That's
that really interests me. Like what kind of background do we not have here?
yeah, I remember I looked up a long time ago what the other elementals were because I thought one of them was actually Firestorm. I thought he was considered the fire elemental. So, like, there's a lot of elementals throughout the DC
Hmm,
universe. And then but
interesting.
the earth elemental thing, that's the I don't know if Alan Moore's gonna touch on it later on, but I'd be curious of, like, in the past, what were the other earth elementals then?
Hmm. Yeah, that's. If you know more about that, about the elementals in the DC universe, leave us a comment. We really want to know. Then the Spectre tells Swamp Thing that Abby's soul is in the unspeakable realms below, and her soul must stay there. Swamp Thing is about to throw a fit because of how mad that makes him, and he looks like he's about to like go off and try and beat up the Spectre, who a moment ago the Spectre's eye was much bigger than Swamp Thing himself. But Swamp Thing's like, nah, forget that. I'm taking this guy out. But the stranger stops him from trying to do that.
Yeah, that's the comic book equivalent of like when you're hanging out with your buddies and that one drunk guy is going to try and fight the big guy at the end of the bar, and you're like,
Hold me
"Don't be
back!
stupid."
Hold me back!
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening here. Because like, yeah, I'm liking Swamp Thing, man. I'm feeling you, bro. But yeah, Spectre's going to eat you up and crap you out like you're nothing.
The stranger lets the Spectre know that Abby's soul was condemned by somebody who should not have had the power to do that. The stranger convinces the Spectre that due to their circumstances, Abby's soul should be rescued. Spectre relents and decides to let them pass. That to me almost seems like, so you said that Stranger should have known more about the Swamp Thing Alec Holland situation, and this to me indicates that the Spectre is maybe not as all seeing or all knowing as maybe the Stranger is. My familiarity with the Spectre is very limited. It's when Hal Jordan was the Spectre for a little while. I read some of those issues, and I honestly don't remember a whole lot about them. But I almost thought I remembered the Spectre being a little bit more omnipotent than that.
It really depends. And there's a couple of times I don't remember if it was Alan Moore or if it was Grant Morrison, but there was somebody at one point that kind of wrote that into a line of it's like it just it very oh, I'm sorry, no, it was Neil Gaiman. I believe it was in the Books of Magic that talked about that, that kind of threw a line in there about how one moment he could be like this powerful, all-knowing being, and the next moment he's like capturing criminals in the streets and stuff. Because Spectre's golden age character goes back to the 30s, basically.
So once again, canon is whatever the writer decides, which I guess is okay. But then I don't know. I
It,
those inconsistencies bug me sometimes a little bit, unless there's a really good explanation for it.
it's I think it's because over the time you kind of see what the character can become. And so like with all this years of history, these characters kind of grow and become bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's like, well, okay, sometimes maybe they're a little too big and you need to pull them back. I mean, like, you know, Superman at one point was like, so powerful that like nobody could stop him. So what did they do? They kind of lowered his power level a little bit. And it just, when you're kind of throwing this stuff out by the seat of your pants, you have a hard time developing a like proper continuity, I
Hmm.
think.
Yeah, and I think editorial should be taking care of that. But anyway, I don't want to get too far off topic. Swamp Thing and the stranger enter into the realm of chaos that is terrible, but still not as bad as their final destination. They approach the gates of hell, and the stranger tells Swamp Thing that Swamp Thing must go on alone. Seems to be a common theme to get rid of whoever is in the panel at the moment from the future group that will be Justice League Dark. But we'll get there eventually. Swamp Thing must go on alone. Convenient plot device. And the stranger reiterates to Swamp Thing how awful the place is that Swamp Thing wants to go, and asks Swamp Thing if he is sure. Swamp Thing never hesitates. He's like, "Yep, let's go. Well, I'm going." And then one of my least favorite DC characters. If you watched our previous episode where the books had co-starred the Demon, I don't like his rhymes. They stretch it too far. I don't like the Demon. That's me. I understand. I'm in the minority. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate the demon. The rhyming can get annoying sometimes, but it's like I don't hate the demon. He's an interesting character. Sometimes like it's just this demon is a little I think what hurts for me is the visual because like the first panel that we see him in like his full on face. He looks he looks like a damn cat.
I see that.
I don't know. I don't like that look for the demon. It does not work for me.
And it doesn't quite look like that in any of the panels on the following page.
No.
Yeah, that's weird. The demon does offer to help the pair, but he has a price. I mean, it's not like the demon owes Swamp Thing for helping with the Monkey King.
I mean, to be fair, he never did actually get any payment for that, so
So the price the demon wants is interesting. It's a flower that's been on the stranger's lapel the whole time. The stranger says the flower is from the western slope of heaven. The demon takes it and says he will use its beauty to torture people in hell. And you know what? That line just that made me smile because a lot of the time the demon doesn't really you don't really see the demon aspect of the demon. He's like, no, I'm going to take this beautiful, wonderful flower and take it back to hell with me just to torture people and show them how beautiful things can be and how they'll never get to experience it themselves because they're stuck in hell.
I mean that's a great point. I Most of the time I see the demon, he's basically a hero. He feels kind of like a tragic hero kind of thing. Like you said, you never get to see the evil aspect, which is kind of a shame because he is a demon. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe he's fighting for good, but he's still a demon. So there should be some evil aspects to all that.
You know what? This brings me close to almost liking the demon. Swamp Thing and the demon take their leave from the stranger, and the stranger warns the demon that Swamp Thing must go alone due to the rules. The demon says, what are they going to do if I break the rules? Send me to hell? And then lets out a laugh that just covers the entire bottom of the page. And I'm just like, yes, like that's honestly the best line the demon has ever had that I've seen, and I literally laughed out loud when I read that line. As the demon did, same time, me and the demon laughing. That was a great line.
It really was because it kind of reminded me a little bit of like back in my younger days. I'm aging myself here, where I would go into work or whatever and just be like, multiple times I'd walk by my manager who was like, "Oh, you're not doing your job right." And I'm just like, "What are you gonna do? Fire me?" Just that attitude, like, go ahead, I dare you to fire. I feel like that was that demon right there. I was like, all right, let's see what you got. What's the worst you can do to me? Come on.
Then the demon starts having some rhyming conversations with other demons, other lesser demons. One of the lesser demons pulls out Sunderland from the anatomy lesson. Was that the issue?
Yep,
Was that what it was called? Okay.
yep.
Pulls out Sunderland, and you can see our previous episode on the anatomy lesson for more on who Sunderland is. Sunderland sees Swamp Thing and accuses Swamp Thing of sending Sunderland to hell. Swamp Thing just doesn't respond.
I mean, kind of makes sense. I don't know what I would do if I sent somebody to hell, go down to rescue the love of my life, essentially, and then come across that person. I'd just be like, all right, like like what do you say? You can't really say like, oh, my bad, dude.
And here's what gets me: the Lesser Demon and Etrigan were having this conversation. Etrigan rhyming, of course, but Sunderland was not there. And then the demon does not appear to be wearing any. The Lesser Demon does not appear to be wearing any clothes, and he pulls Sunderland out from somewhere. Where was Sunderland?
Um, oh,
you,
Sunderland is there. Sunderland is there. I'm
oh,
looking
is
at the
he?
panel now. Yes, he is doing something to his leg. Looks like maybe scrubbing it or
Oh,
something.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right.
Because I just,
Darn, I
because
thought
I
the
just,
demon was pulling Sunderland from somewhere.
well, it's okay because there still is a creepy aspect to it. Because yes, the demon is not wearing any pants, and I do believe I see a demon penis.
Yep, yep. I think you're right. And
All right,
I will note that there is no Comics Code Authority stamp on this issue.
which is why we have demon penis. So
Exactly.
that is the first, ladies and gentlemen. On this channel, we have demon penis.
All right. So the demon Etrigan mentions to Swamp Thing. So the demon mentions to Swamp Thing that God did not make hell; that men did before they even died. The demon mentions that God is not a parent or a policeman, and each soul climbs or descends by its own accord, which I found interesting. Like if nobody's judging these souls, why would a soul descend of its own accord?
That's actually a really good question. And it kind of almost reminds me a little bit of one of my favorite issues of the Spectre, the Hal Jordan run you were talking about, where I think it was Abin Sur was being tortured in hell. And it was like it kind of goes on for a couple pages, and at one point he's like, you see the demon torturing him is getting bored, and she goes on to tell him that it's like, well, I don't want to be here, you don't want to be here, you're the one who put yourself here because you felt like you did something wrong and you need to be punished.
Hmm,
And
interesting
i
consistency.
I could see that being something along those lines.
I like that idea for the DC universe.
I took that into my own bloody theology.
I'm not going to get into my theology here. So we come across Arcane in Hell, who says hello to Holland, and he uses the name Holland. Kane mentions his niece is up ahead, but Swamp Thing will not want her. Arcane asks how many years he has been in hell. Swamp Thing says since yesterday. And then we see Arcane scream in agony. That was such a cool moment for me. Very satisfying. I wanted to see Arcane, the level of suffering that he's had. I mean, we talked previously in a previous episode about just how evil the things he has done were. Like I said, it's just very satisfying to see him say, "Wait, it's only been a day."
I mean, especially after the infamous incident that we do not like to discuss, but that and like people go back and check, I think it's like 2 or 3 episodes back, and you'll understand what we're talking about. That alone, like he deserves to be suffering in hell. If anyone should be pulled out of a demon ass, it should be Arcane.
So then, Swamp Thing and the demon come across Abby's soul. There are lesser demons surrounding her, questioning how they should torture her. Swamp Thing runs up to her and knocks the demons out of the way. Then those lesser demons are trying to decide how they should react to Swamp Thing pushing them out of the way. And then Swamp Thing says the demons have done enough and punches one of them really hard. That was, in my opinion, like you can see Swamp Thing like smashing his face in. And I'm like, that's pretty awesome.
I mean, Swamp Thing in hell fighting demons, I really do. This was a really good payoff to this storyline. I thought they did a great job pulling this off. I mean, the build up to it was handled really well. And we've seen a couple times where I get excited for something that's coming, and then it's just like slowly deflates as I read it. I'm just like, okay. This was not like, I mean, like I literally read this today after getting off work and falling asleep like 4 times trying to read it. And I was like, I'm going to finish this because this is so interesting.
The demon tells Swamp Thing he can't fight all of hell and it's time to run. A small fight breaks out, and the lesser demons are pissed when Etrigan sides with Swamp Thing. Arcane actually tries to send out a tendril to try and trip up Swamp Thing as Swamp Thing is trying to exit hell through a portal the demon has created. The demon then, and again, this is probably my favorite version of the demon ever, Etrigan, decides to punt Arcane's head like it's a football. Afterwards, Swamp Thing passes through the portal with Abby. Abby wakes up cold in the swamp with no memory of what happened. And we see another full page ending where, in my opinion, the art is poor, but the coloring saves it. And there is a note that Swamp Thing is himself crying.
Uh, I didn't have a problem with the back page, to be honest. It wasn't terrible to me. I mean, the detail's kind of there in the front, and then as it gets further away, you start to kind of lose some of the detail, but it wasn't super terrible.
It is better than the last issue. I'll give it that.
The appearances I think, are probably what is going to give this a really high grade for me. I mean, the writing itself I enjoyed, but the special appearances were just like That I mean, chef's kiss right there.
Mm. And really, I haven't said much about the art in this issue because honestly, like for 95% or more of the issue, I just didn't like the art that much. It does have a style and a vibe, especially when they're in hell, and I think the style and the vibe fits really well when they're in hell. But I still think the art is not great. The pencils to me across the whole issue feel rushed, especially since this is a longer issue. In my opinion, the few places that the art does look good, it's mostly saved by the color.
I think the pencils worked well in this issue, mainly just because I think it kind of works with Heaven and Hell. I like the art style for Heaven and Hell. I don't know, like there's something about it that it just kind of worked for me. Where when he's in the swamps and stuff like that, and like dealing with the real world, that's where it kind of turns a little bit into like, okay, I can see the flaws, but I think because of how Heaven and Hell is just so like it could be anything, like it could like anything could look like anything, so it didn't bother me.
I give this issue 3 out of 5 arcane head puns. Story, in my opinion, completely carried the book. I felt like the art was mostly phoned in. But having said that, I did find this a very satisfying conclusion to the whole Matt Arcane Abby situation, and I thought it was a very nice close to this chapter of the book so that we can finally move on to other things.
Milestone for this episode. I'm going to give this our very first 5. I enjoyed the
Mm.
hell out of this issue. The guest stars, the concepts, the art didn't bother me because of the location. Like it just everything about this issue actually worked, and it pulled me further into the whole cult of Alan Moore. I was like, okay, man, I've read Alan Moore and I like Alan Moore. This is where I'm probably going to fall in love with Alan Moore. Like I will. I mean, if he's still single and he's ready to mingle, he can have my number. I will do whatever the man wants because this is a really really good issue for me.
Even with the best artist in the world, I don't know that I would have necessarily given it a 5. It with a different artist and better art, definitely would have been higher up there. 4.5, 4.75 maybe. There's a couple of places that I just wasn't feeling the writing, which would keep me from giving it that perfect grade. But someday I'll give something a perfect grade. It's not today
I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all.
Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We are really glad that you're here with us watching. We do this for the love of the comics media.
Yes, and please join us on Patreon where we have our post-crisis chat book club for our members. We will let our members, or we will let our patrons get their say on the book. We'll even read those comments on the channel when we record, which we haven't done yet, and we probably should start doing eventually.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there.
Also, don't forget to check the description for links to our Amazon affiliate page. You can pick up the book we are reading tonight in various formats. I happen to have my trade paperback right here. This came in a box set of the entire Alan Moore Swamp Thing run, which you can get for a very reasonable price. And when you click on one of our affiliate links, a bit of your purchase comes back to our channel. It doesn't cost you anything extra. It gives just us a little kickback, so we have a little money to keep this channel going, to improve the channel. I don't know if you've noticed that the sound and lighting have gotten better as things have gone along. We did spend a little bit of our own money since we don't have any coming in from the show yet, but we want to keep making improvements like that, and your contributions can help do that. And also, as we talked about, the Dead Man Omnibus, I will put a link for that down below. It is a good read. The art is exceptional. There's Kirby art in here. It's got that post-crisis little mini series that Cookie mentioned. So if you need a copy of this, hit that affiliate link down below.
Yes, we definitely need that money. And hey, I'm gonna throw this out there. Anyone on Patreon, if you donate like $10,000, and to like not only will you give me a studio, but I will let you punch me in the face 3 times. Please don't actually donate the
I
$10,000.
wonder if I have enough room on my credit card. Anyway, you can
Okay,
follow
but
us
anyways,
on.
now no, this is my spot.
Oh,
Shut
sorry.
up.
My bad.
Okay. So if you're wondering, if you're sitting there right now wondering, wait a second, where can I get more of these wonderful people? Well, you can follow us on Blue Sky. The link is in the description down below. If you go on there, we'll be announcing when we're going to post new episodes. Also, you could like this video. You can subscribe to the channel. You can comment on the video. You can show the video to your friends, show the video to your grandmother. I don't care how the video gets out there. Just get it out there, and it's going to help support us and make us grow.
And the last thing we want to do is give a big shout out to our editor, Nacho King.
Yes, man, we cannot do this without you, my man. You are a godsend.
Absolutely. So we're still stuck on a sign off phrase. What was it last time? Keep it swampy?
Keep it swampy, baby.
No. Suggest something down below. Let us know what you think it should be. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.